Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. My name is Joe, and this week we're going to go over how we grew our portfolio in just 3 years well over $3 million without using banks, without using our credit, and very little cash. Today, I'm lucky enough to have my wife, Jen, as our co-host. So she's going to be jumping into, I'm going to ask her some questions. So I'm going to put her on the spot, y'all. And if you do have any questions, like I said earlier, but please make sure we put those down in the comments and we'll make sure we answer all those questions for you. This is really not, like I said earlier, a planned presentation, more of we're just going to tell our story, share it with you, share some of the things that we've learned, what we're still learning, how you could implement these things into your business so you could do this too, and how to do a lot faster, right? There was a lot of different lumps that we learned along the way. So first of all, we are not giving you financial advice. We're just sharing experiences and stories that we've had on our own. We always highly recommend every time you do a real estate transaction, you should talk to an attorney, have them take a look at it. And we do on every one of our deals. So really the name of the game was like, how did Jen and I get started, right? And the first thing that we did is we had the ideas that we can do this. We were originally starting to burr houses when the market was taking a big dip in 2008, 2009, 2010. You know, our story was we were both had full-time jobs. And when we saw the market take a dip, we saw some advantages where we could buy some real estate and get a pretty good discount on it. In 2008, 2009, and 10, 11, a lot of investors pulled out of the game. A lot of them had no choice. It got thrown out, right? In the market. So with that being the case, we were in a position to where we could find properties almost right off the MLS, most of them, and it was fairly easy to do. And if you had access to cash, you could buy them in cash. We could rehab them. We could rent them out, refinance, and then repeat it, right? And then with my old job is I was talking to folks at the banks all the time because I was in finance. And I had a conversation with one of my friends and said that, you know, they typically will cut you off at 10 mortgages. After that, life becomes hard. And I'm thinking of scaling my empire down the road with my wife and my kids and my future. And I wanted to retire with rental income. I wanted to get out of my day job and be able to live the life that I see everybody on TV do all these things. And I'm like, well, shoot, we want that too. So I knew buying just 10 properties wasn't going to cut it. Now, he also did explain there's other ways around that. Some banks have in-house lending, like portfolio lending and things like that they could do. But he says, you know, obviously it gets to be a little trickier the more you grow. So the big change for us is how we were able to grow our portfolio and how to do it quickly the way we did was we realized if we're going to scale and we're going to buy properties, we need to figure out how to do this more than 1 or 2 a year. Because 1 or 2 a year were great, but I mean, at the point we'd have to be like, you know, 70 years old and still not fully retired yet at that point because it was so slow. So then the part I guess where I'm going to kind of share today was that next step of, and correct me if I'm wrong, hon, but it was in 2016. It was around May and June. I was on YouTube, believe it or not, and I stumbled across Ron the Grand, and I was talking with some of our family about Ron, and they started doing some research on him too, and they were sending me some of this information about Ron and how to do houses, what he calls the pretty house business. The pretty house business is really just creative finance. It's how to buy houses for even top dollar, but we still get discounts, right? But even if you had to pay top dollar for a house, how you could structure that deal to make it work for you and make it work well for the seller. You know, we were in a situation today. I was talking with one of our students, and they're buying a deal on sub 2, and he was like, "In the interest rate that we're getting is at 3.1%." And I'm looking at that deal, and then I'm like, it cash flows how much a month? And I think it was like 400 some change net. I'm like, it's a win, right? Because when they bought that house originally a few years ago, they bought it at a pretty decent price. And you know, he's working out the down payment with the seller, but it seems to be reasonable, and they're going to make that deal happen. And he's like, and I'm able to get this deal at 3.1%. They're happy. So once we realized by studying Ron, and this isn't one of those get rich overnight things at all, because that was in May and June. And then by the time it took us to get our first creative finance deal was the spring of 17, where we already had rentals and things like that. But when we were going to start buying from here on out, this was the line that we drew, that we're no longer going to walk into a Bank of America and say, please, can I get another loan? or the local credit union or bank. Once we figured this art out, it was a complete game changer for us. This is where her and I went on a tear of starting to buy real estate, right? Because now what I had to do was figure out sellers who are in situations where they wanted to sell, some needed to sell, but either way, they had a property they wanted to get rid of. And they're in a situation where maybe it wasn't a complete junker. Maybe it wasn't that fixer upper that I'm able to get for 50 cents on the dollar that I'm going to rehab and do a fix and flip on or do a burr on, right? What about those turnkey houses that are in a situation where maybe they owe too much on it even, and they can't afford to put it on the market because by the time they pay a realtor 6% commission, they're making payments. Sometimes they can't even afford to make those payments, right? They're still paying the utilities and all the other things too. And then by the time they cash out of that and pay that realtor commission, pay some closing costs, they might be in the red. They might have to show up to closing with a check. Now, sometimes people could afford to do that. There's a lot of situations where people can't. We're buying one right now in Niagara Falls for a gentleman who just bought this house. He closed on it in June of this year. Guys, 4 months ago, he closed on this house. He bought it. It's a turnkey house. It's dated. It's clean. It's not even extremely dated. It's totally livable. But 2 of the bedrooms had wood paneling walls, and he didn't like that, so he took them out. Then he realized how much it was going to cost to drywall that, put it back together, never even moved into the house, said, I can't afford this $1,600 payment, plus putting another $3,000-4,000 to drywall the 2 bedrooms, finish them, paint them. I just want to sell this thing. Talks to his realtor. The realtor says, well, market's changed since you bought it. We can't even list it for what you bought it for. Bought it for 127, owes 122. Right? So they're in a situation. So for us to be able to take over that deal with no money down and cover closing costs, this is a situation where that seller is happy that we could take care of that payment, right? The interest rate we're getting on that one, I think is 4.1 or 2%. It was really low. I know it's a crack over 4%. I know what we could rent it for. And we're going to go over our exit strategy in a minute because we do a little bit something special to renting. But in that situation, I know we're going to cash flow. And that's why I love that property. Once we send our contractor there to go put up to $3-4 grand in drywall and some paint, he'll be back to beautiful again. And we'll find somebody who'll gladly move into that property because it's in a nice area in Niagara Falls. Don't know if you know this fun fact, Niagara Falls, New York, some of it's a pretty rough area, guys. We hear Niagara Falls, it's beautiful. Some areas it is beautiful. So this is actually in the beautiful side. So we're really happy about the property. But we find these houses and we find these situations where sometimes they are what we call an accidental landlord. We find a lot of those. So what's an accidental landlord? That's my wife right here. She was an accidental landlord.
Sure
What
was.
happened there? Do you want to explain how that happened to you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I own my own house and then I met someone that I fell in love with and moved into his house. And now I was renting my house out accidentally because I no longer live there. So I kind of became a landlord.
Right. Then we got married. And now later on, here we go. But was an accidental landlord, wasn't planning on buying the house with the intent of being a landlord. We find a lot of those deals. Somebody gets married, somebody gets divorced, somebody gets a job transfer, and they have a hard time selling, right? So the one thing though, I will say when we talk to sellers and somebody's in a situation where they want to sell, I'm going to give you guys a tip. Say it's on the market right now. And they reached out to you, say, hey, Jen, I have a house for sale and I see that you buy houses. And this one's actually listed with a realtor and it's not selling. So I'm reaching out to you, right? That's why they're reaching out to me. If not, the realtor would. So I always ask them the questions about financing and things like that. But one of the questions that we ask is what happens if you don't sell the house? You might want to write that question down if you got a pen and paper. I'm recording this, by the way, so you could watch this later on. I see Carrie's driving, so don't worry, Carrie, we got you. But what we want to make sure what we do is we want to ask that question to a seller is what happens if you don't sell the house? Do they have a game plan, right? Are they going to be a landlord? You'd be surprised with some of the answers. I've had some say I'll give it back to the bank. I've had other things said, so you will get a great answer out of that. And we really try to master of asking great questions to really find out what's going on in the situation. So a lot of our deals what we look at is like what we talked about before, what our avatar person is that we're buying their houses, right? What do they typically look like? A lot of them, they've owned the house less than 5 years, right? They're not all distressed. Everybody seems to think like they have to be a distressed seller. They're not. Sometimes folks just want the convenience of being able to sell their house to somebody, but it's not the house where they're going to give you an extreme discount on because it's not that type of property. It's not in that kind of condition, right? What other alternatives do they have? It's you guys, it's us, it's all of us. They're the other alternative, because what happens when you have a beautiful turnkey house that doesn't qualify for some low cash offer, and the seller just doesn't want to deal with having to list the house? And I'll be honest with you, my wife and I just moved to Florida 2 months ago. But in this, we went back to New York to sell our home. We had to go through that retail process of selling our home. And let me tell you what a pain in the butt that is. Because I lived in the house for 16 years. Jen moved in 2 years after that. So she lived there for 14 years. We've got 2 kids. You got a basement, because in upstate New York, we had basements. So there's stuff, right? 2-car garage. You accumulate stuff all over these years. We had to get a dumpster and decide what we want to keep, what we want to donate, and what we want to throw out. And while I was doing a lot of my Zoom meetings, I would watch my wife walk out with bag after bag of whatever it was clinking away, and it would go in the dumpster. And I'm sure it was some of my stuff that I didn't even know I had anymore, right? So I didn't miss it. Don't worry about it. Did a wonderful job, filled that thing right up. But either way, then we had to get some rooms painted in the house and fix this and replace that windows. We had to do some stuff to the house. Not everybody could afford to do that, right? Small little things get added up to 10 to 20 grand quickly. Doing a bathroom vanity, right? Just to kind of update it somewhat. Next, we had to list it with a realtor. They have to come through, take pictures. When you have a dog and 2 little kids, to keep the house museum looking clean is not always the easiest task, but we did a good job. But then it's every single time somebody wants to set up a showing, you're having to put the kids, the dog, the wife in the car and go cruising around. What are we doing now? What are we going to drive again? Then I could be back for another half an hour just to leave again. That's an inconvenience, right? It's a real pain. So having to deal with all of that, and then having to, who knows, does it sell opening weekend? Are you dealing with a month of this stuff? Because right now listings are longer. You might have to deal with that for 2 months, 3 months. What's it like dealing with that same stuff for 5 months? It is torture, I promise you, right? So what other alternative do these folks have? Especially if they're in a situation where they don't have that luxury of waiting 3 or 4 months to sell. But it's a beautiful turnkey house, like Mr. Niagara Falls will call him. Mr. Niagara Falls has a nice house, but he's struggling living in his old house, still paying rent that he's going to stay in, and paying this $1,600 payment every month of his new property that he didn't even move into, that he doesn't have the $3,000 to $4,000 to even put into the house to fix it up, to put it on the market, to sell it for less than what he owes, to probably have to write a $15,000 check to say goodbye to his house. He's in a no-win situation, the poor guy. So in our situation, what else is he going to do? He's got 2 choices. He's going to become an accidental landlord and put somebody in there if he could fix that place up, and then who knows how that's going to turn out. He's not experienced with that, works a lot of weird hours. He can list it on the market and lose a ton of money, and he's not going to have the ability to write that check, so that's not really been an option. Or he's going to call up Wells Fargo and say, hey guys, I'm going to have to default. You're going to have a foreclosure on your credit for 10 years. The next 3 to 5 years of trying to buy another house, if that was ever your plan, are going to be nearly impossible. And if they do, it's going to be ugly, right? So what other alternative does he have is that where we can buy this property in what's called subject to, which means subject to the underlying debt. So that means, and I was very nice, we did give him $1,000 over what he owes on the property to say if there's some stuff to help get all your life back in order, put a little bit of money in your pocket, but we're going to cover our half of the attorney costs. We're going to cover his half too. So he doesn't have to worry about expenses out of there. And he's going to walk away with $1,000 in his pocket. We're going to take over that $1,500 payment, some change. We're going to rent that all day long for probably $2,000. But we're going to do a rent own. But either way, we'll talk about that later on. But what we're going to do is we're going to make that payment on time too, every single month. right? So what's that going to do for his credit? It's not going to take a big atomic bomb and explode like having a foreclosure on there, right? And the way that I write that deal up, guys, I'll be honest with you, I don't write it subject to. Most people know that as the term, but there's another way that we write it, which is what's called a wrap mortgage, but what's called a mirror wrap mortgage. So it does the same effect as paying down the same exact way. The only difference why we are always preferring a wrap mortgage is when that buyer decides to, guess what, I met Mrs. Right, we got married, we want to buy a house, and I need to have this old debt off my credit, right? Because they think it could mess up what's called their DTI, their debt to income. If we write it on what's called a wrap mortgage, that's a note. That is a note between us and the seller, letting him know that we're making that payments. We've done this a ton of times already because of the way that we do this. And this was recommended by Ron. This is why we pay the money for the best coaching, not some coaching, but the best coaching. They don't call him the godfather of real estate for nothing. And he's going to be interviewing us this Friday on his live summit at 3:00, I think we're on.
The 21st, 3:00.
The 21st, next Friday. Cool. We're getting to do that too, so we're pretty excited. But either way, we write it as a wrap mortgage. And the reason why is because now when we show the closing documents to the lender, right, and we show them this note that shows that we're making the payments, it's going to wipe out his DTI issues with our incoming payment. It's going to take care of his outgoing debt. So that's why we love to write it on a wrap mortgage. It's a very easy thing to do. The attorneys do it. Once you explain to them how to do it, they get it. Make sure you're working with a good attorney, title company who understands this stuff. That's one thing I do recommend, because they will cross all of the T's, dot the I's. Scott Horn out of Texas, Dallas, Texas, does a lot of educating on it too. He's wonderful. He works on a lot of our deals. Super smart guy. Does a lot of this investing himself besides being an attorney. And there's still a bunch that we love to use. So part of networking as together, we share that information with everybody too. But so how are we able to buy that house? I'm estimating the closing costs on that deal will probably be about $4,000. And I have to give Mr. Niagara Falls $1,000. So at closing, am I getting my credit checked? No. Am I asking the bank for permission? No. Are we having to go take out loans or do credit checks or do any of these things? No. What we have to do is we have to get an insurance policy. We put our own insurance on there, and we do show that it's on that property. And we do show that the seller is on our policy, is additionally insured. So we have the property, the right insurance on there with the seller's name on there is additionally insured, but it's our policy because we're now the owners. The existing policy is no longer good because the existing policy, the owner doesn't own that house anymore. So we have our policy, but we do put that previous seller's information on there as additionally insured. So setting it up the right way, the key is the details, guys, the small details. These are the things you don't learn on YouTube very well. So when we buy it that way, we have it additionally insured, then we're going to start making those payments. Now you could have a service company, which is a company that you could pay probably about $20 a month-ish to be the middleman to take the payments from you and to pay their lender. To be honest with you, we don't. We set it up automatic payments. And if you buy it with a wrap mortgage, you don't need to do that. Now, I know there's some folks who talk about the sub 2, and in that situation, you would definitely need to. And the reason why is because on a subject 2, there's no note between you, the buyer, and the seller. There's nothing in place saying that you are making that payment. All you've done was just closing the property and taking over that underlying debt, subject to the underlying debt, right? So that's why we create a wrap mortgage with a note in place showing that we're making that payment. So the other way to do it on a sub 2 is to have a service company be the middle company between, showing that that payment's being made. Okay, so that's why it's important. So if you ever see in any of these communities and somebody's like, I bought a property subject to, and now the seller wants to qualify for another mortgage and they can't because I didn't set it up with a service company, you're asking for disaster. So if you're going to do a sub 2, make sure you just do it the right way. That's okay. If you're going to do it, I prefer on a wrap mortgage where they're just going to create a new note. If you're going to do it on a seller finance deal, that's on a free and clear property. It's pretty easy to do. None of that really makes a difference. Sub 2, it's just a seller finance deal, right? just to get clarification there. So by helping out Mr. Niagara Falls, we show up to closing with $5,000. We show up with our insurance policy already set and done for the next 6 months or whatever they charge us for it, right? Probably $800, $1,000, whatever that costs. Now what I'm going to do is send out our contractors the day of closing to go put up some drywall. Now what we are going to do is a little bit different than what most people do. This is why I love what we do. Thank you once again, Ron LeGrand, give him a big shout out. But we do a lease purchase with these properties. So we found a way to get paid like you get upfront money, almost like you're a wholesaler. We found a way to not only that by getting that big check in the beginning, and I'll go over how, but we also get monthly spread like a landlord without the landlord responsibilities. I'm going to tell you how. And then down the road, when these people get us cashed out, we're going to get a big back end check like we were a fix and flipper. And I'm going to tell you how, but without having to pay capital gains tax, because we've owned the property for more than a year and all the other good stuff. So what we do is we market the property as a lease purchase, where a lot of people know is rent to own. Now what we do on our rent to own properties is we require a large non-refundable option deposit. We've been doing this literally since 2017, guys, and this changed our whole lives. And it really helped us scale to another level too. Because once again, your total cost of entry is not just $5,000. Your total cost of entry on that deal is going to be probably 15 grand. Because I got to give $5 grand at closing. Let's just say my insurance policy is $1,000. I'm gonna have to go spend $4,000 for the walls to be put back up and painted. I gotta pay utilities, the heat, electric, water, even though none of it's really running too much, but I gotta pay some of that, right? Then I have to make 3 payments. I'm anticipating of $1,600 a month. So I need to sock that aside before I could find the right tenant buyer. Because when you're finding a tenant buyer, it's not the first person who just has, a little bit of money. Ideally, I'm looking for somebody who has a large non-refundable option deposit, and most of ours range between $10,000 to $30,000. Now that's also depending on the price point of the home. We try to be around 10%, because what we found was, we never tell them this, because sometimes you'll have somebody who's a little bit under 10%, but they're wonderful. And it would be a good fit for them, and we work something out. Sometimes they might have more than 10%. Well, the more they put down, the better. And it goes towards the purchase, pardon me. So with that being the case, we really want to find the person who has the right down payment. Now, you want to go over, babe, how we advertise for that?
Finding the tenant buyer.
Yeah, like how do we market? How do we find these tenant buyers compared to just putting a for rent sign? There's a couple of things that we do.
I mean, it's similar in the sense that you can use free marketing and you're going to get a ton of interest in it, because a lot of folks they can't qualify for a loan. So you're going to actually appeal to way more people than you anticipated for. And for us, we've always had great success just building a Facebook platform. We've never paid for leads as far as that goes. And really just showcasing the home and the benefits and the ability to be able to rent until you're able to buy is huge for people. There's so many benefits to living in a home and not being in an apartment. So you don't really have a hard time marketing. We do put it on Zillow as a rental, Craigslist, but I think most of it comes from Facebook.
Yeah, we have an actual team that helps us filter those leads, but we could get 100 to 300 leads per day. Once you market that out there, people who are interested in it, because right now it's under 20% could qualify for a mortgage. It's probably like 15 to 17% could qualify for a conventional mortgage. So that means if I'm selling a house in the market, most of my appeal is to somebody who qualify for a mortgage or cash buyers, right? But what about the other 20 something or 80 something percent who don't qualify for a mortgage? How can we appeal to them, right? So we're looking out of those, not for folks who are just wanting to rent, but for who down the road want to be a homeowner. So in that situation, we're going to probably, I would estimate, get probably around the $20,000 down. So the reason why I love this business model is if we pay those 3 payments, even 4 payments, right? We paid the 5,000 at closing. We paid the 4,000 for the walls to be put back up. We paid the insurance policy, a couple utilities along the way. And then we find the right person who's like, hey, I'm ready. I've got the money. We pulled their credit. We've verified income. We've checked all the things, and they don't qualify for a mortgage now, but we came up with a strategy within the next how much time they're going to qualify for a mortgage. Then what we do is we write that up and we go to the attorney's office and they sign it with the attorney, right? They're going to sign a lease. We're going to give them a time frame of typically 2 years, and then they're going to have the option to buy it for X amount. Now, where this could turn good or bad, depending on how you do your business, we could spend a complete whole other course on how we do this the right way. But once again, guys, the success is in the details. And we really make sure that when we put a tenant buyer in the property, we're putting in somebody that we're going to try to set up the best way for success. But it's really on them, right? Because some of these folks just need more time on the job. Some of these folks, maybe they do need help with credit, and that's fine too. But if you need more time on the job and every 6 months you keep changing jobs, like stop, right? Like chill out, stay at this place for a little while so then we could get you qualified, then change your jobs later on. But we'll work with them. We have a lot of folks who've gone way over the 2 years, and we just keep on revisiting the terms and renew the program. Some, obviously the house's pricing went up recently, and when they did, we readjusted. We still make sure everybody got a great deal, but we also had to change the figures to according to current market. We also changed the rents. We once again didn't go to as high as we could have if we put in a new tenant, I'm sure, but we still, these are great people and we still want to make sure that they're getting a great deal, and they still are. Obviously for us, we have had an increase, and that's been wonderful for everybody too. In the down market, it's your choice if you want to revisit the price or keep it the same, right? Because the thing is with our program, which I do love, is we're giving them almost as much time as they need. As long as you're paying on time and taking excellent care of the property, we really don't mind. And one of the reasons why is because we're not responsible for maintenance. We're not responsible for repairs. We're not responsible for utilities. And so to be quite honest with you, as long as you pay us on time, you will never, ever, ever, ever hear from us. I could walk by you in the supermarket and you won't even know who I am, and I won't know who you are, and that's okay. Because if I had to go to Bank of America and apply for a mortgage, the person that approved my mortgage, I don't need to know who that is, right? So we treat them like a homeowner. I want to give them that privacy, that respect, as long as they're doing all the right stuff, right? And they love that too. They love the fact they have something that they could do some landscaping. They could put a garden in the backyard, as long as that's okay, with the town and all that, but they could treat it as like their home. And they love that. So the clients that we deal with are in a little bit different caliber than the typical renter who's like, I'm just going to be here for a year and I'm out of here anyways. Completely different people. And they got some skin in the game. We have
Right. And
some that are getting to it right now.
I was going to interject for a second, because we do set them up for success. It's not that if you don't qualify in a year or two, you're out and we're, trying to turn the property over. That is never our intent. And I really, truly love this model for that, because like Joe said, we want to set them up in the proper way to be able to help them become homeowners, but it may take them a while.
So the reason why we love this is because we're going to collect that probably $20,000 up front. It's going to go towards the purchase. Your account is going to tax you on it as income. So does yours to spend. It's non-refundable. It's written right in the agreement. So with that being the case, what do we do? Obviously, if we've had $15,000 out on that deal and we received $20,000 at closing, we're up $5,000. We've got no credit. I'm not tied to that mortgage. And now we're able to cash flow $300 to $400 a month from here on out. Now, obviously, what we do is we have an increase in the price of the house, and that's going to be built into time as well. So in this circumstances, especially in like upstate New York, houses don't appreciate or depreciate as rapidly as like where we live in Florida. If you bought a house like 2 years ago in Florida, it's worth like twice as much now. It's the weirdest thing. Where in upstate New York, if you bought it for X, it is just like a crack over X. So we do price our houses accordingly, and we do make sure we collect a large enough down payment, non-refundable option deposit that goes towards the purchase. So when they are ready to purchase, we've got enough to cover their 3.5%. Sometimes they might need 5% if they're going to go conventional, their closing costs, the first year of your taxes, your homeowner policy, all the stuff up front that they're going to need. It boils down to about 10%. So what you don't want to do is set them up for failure, knowing you're selling somebody a $200,000 home and you know you're going to need 10% and you know you're going to need 20 grand. And they're like, I've got $3,000. And you're like, I'll take it. Because you're at month 3 of making your payments and you haven't found the right candidate yet. And you get desperate. And the first person comes across your desk with 3 grand, I'll tell you what's going to be a nightmare. And you're setting everybody up for failure. And it's never going to work. That lawsuit that's going to come in, don't come in. They do maybe sometimes, but they don't. That one thing they've been waiting on, chances are they don't. So that's the one thing we want to make sure is we collect that up front. So once we get that checked off our list, almost anything else can be fixed. Right. So we work on that. But that's our exit strategy, guys. So if I'm able to get that non-refundable option deposit up front, I'm able to buy these houses with not a lot of money out of pocket, not begging a bank, not getting my credit checked. Can I scale this way model now? Can I get $10,000, $15,000 and then collect a large non-refundable option deposit to pay that money back in a couple months? So now I break even, I'm profitable, and now I'm profiting every single month. And then down the road, if that tenant buyer goes to cash me out, meanwhile, I've paid down my principal. I'm writing off depreciation because I own the house. If you figured out how much depreciation is in these houses, boy, it's a big tax break. So I'm able to cash flow, no credit tied into this. And then once in a while, you're going to have one of these tenant buyers who's ready to go. And the more, it's like a merry-go-round, guys. The more you put into your merry-go-round, that thing keeps cooking around. And once you put them on there, you get your non-refundable option deposit. While they're spinning around, you're collecting your monthly rent, right? And then once in a while, one pops off, that's when you're going to get your big back end check. And we've got one coming right now that is nice. I will promise you. So the worst thing in the world, what do? I lose a property that was cash flowing me $400 a month, but you pick up a 6-figure check. Not the end of the world, right? You could use that to some marketing to get some more properties. Promise you, there's a lot more houses out there for sale. They won't be the last one. But that's with the worst case scenario that happens, right? So this is why we love that business model, because there are some who, believe it or not, give you a big non-refundable option deposit who still don't pay rent on time. There are some who even just say, hey guys, guess what? I'm moving. You could have the house back. My job just moved me out of state. And you're keeping the money. I know that. And you sell the house again. Sometimes you have a third time or more. Depends on the situation. You hope the best, but you can't predict what people are willing to do, right? So this is why we love that business model, is because if I'm just going to put a renter in there and I had to shell out $15,000 to cash flow $300 a month, it's not a terrible deal. I still don't have any credit tied into it. I own a house without going to a bank and I only had to come up with 15 grand. It's not terrible. And I'm in a cash flowing rental, but I got 15 grand on the streets out to make $300 a month. And for us, I rather make that money back as fast as possible, still make that $300 a month, and keep on using the same amount of funds to keep on buying more properties to keep growing. Because I promise you, at $300 a month, it's nice, but when you get 10, it's nice. When you get 20, it's better, and keeps on going on and up. So, and especially if everybody who are renting these homes have given you between $10,000 and $30,000 to $40,000 down to move in, that's also what's that going to help you for your business, right? How's that going to help you grow? And the benefit of this, guys, this is what helped us walk away from our jobs. Jenn was a school teacher, full-time job, great job, master's degree. Me, I was in the car business in the finance office as a finance director, making $200-something thousand a year. And we both got to walk away from our jobs to do this full-time. And the reason why is once I realized I wasn't being held hostage by banks, that I had to have my W-2 in order to buy cash flowing properties. Once I had that freedom to realize I don't need that anymore, and I could buy as much real estate as I want without using banks, I didn't have to be handcuffed to that W-2, neither did she, right? We had that freedom to travel. We went to Florida, what we originally thought was for 1 month, stayed for 3 months, said, I don't want to go back to New York where it's freezing cold, went back to New York, sold our house, sold our stuff, threw out some stuff, kept all the stuff we wanted, and moved back to Florida. And we've been back here for 2 months, dodged a hurricane, dodged tornadoes, had COVID a second time, and couldn't be happier. So this is the luxury, though, that it gives you by having this. We do it all from home, right? We have a wonderful team that works with us, that works for us. And we have meetings all day long. And we have a team that helps us talk to sellers. We have a team that helps us talk to buyers and does a lot of this for us. And this is why it's got us to the point where to do 5 to 10 deals a month consistently is the way we've been doing it, right? And the key to it is when we talk to a lot of sellers, which we do, we usually talk to about 175 a week incoming sellers. When these sellers reach out to us, because they reach out to us, we don't reach out to them. We don't cold call them. They see our Facebook marketing. You guys probably seen it before. We shared what we do. But we do our Facebook marketing, and then they reach out to us and say, I have a house for sale. And when they do, we collect their information and we work on that. Now, once again, the challenge for most is what happens when somebody reaches out to you and they have a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood that doesn't work out for any other wholesaler. They can't figure out how to make that deal happen. What happens if the house just needs maybe like some paint? Nothing major, right? But they need top dollar for it. What are they going to do? That doesn't work for them. So all those leads, a lot of other investors, they get those leads and they throw them out. Right? There's nothing they could do. For us, those are our bread and butter. I love those leads. I actually prefer the beautiful turnkey houses and beautiful neighborhoods versus the one that I know I want to have to do a full gut rehab to. Yuck. I hate those. I'm just being honest. We do them, but I hate them. It's 6 months of your life, right? Between buying it, when you make the deal, how many days till closing, now you've closed, now you got to get all the work done. Now you have to have it, photos and staged and 30 days, 40 days, 50 days on the market, then it sells and it's another 30 days out, whatever. 6 months of your life is gone in that one deal. Hopefully you made good money on it, right? That's a lot of work. Me, if I could get into a beautiful house and help out a seller in a situation and close quickly, because sometimes they're in a little bit of a jam, this is perfect. So these are the strategies that how we grew our business was the strategy of this, right? Buying houses with seller financing, buying houses with what we call sub two, but it's really with wrap mortgages. Some we bought with a lease purchase, what we call the sandwich lease purchase, which really is a concept of how you can control real estate with no money. So what you have is we've had situations where a seller wants to sell, and for some reason or another, maybe they didn't want to transfer that deed into your name because they were worried about the loan being in their name, something like that. So what we've done was we wrote it up as a lease purchase that we're going to take over their existing payment is exactly what it is. And that our option price, you guys want to write this down, is the balance due at executing the option is your option price. So say we write up the deal and they owe 200,000 on it at the time, but 7 years down the road, they owe 170. And now I'm ready to write up my buyer's ready to buy, right? We're ready to go. What's my option price? I'm not going to write up for the 200 grand. I'm going to write up to that's the balance due it executing the option. So the success is in the big details, but writing it that way will make you another 30 grand. So now the agreement shows that we're able to buy it with a lease option. We're able to take over their payment of whatever that is. And that our agreement shows that we're able to release it and to resell it to somebody else at a higher price. So that's the sandwich lease option. So we might have a property that we get under contract for $200,000 if that's their balance, and our payment is $1,200 a month, and we can rent it for $1,800 a month at a $250 price. We collect the 25 grand down. Life is good. No money involved. So you can control real estate with just a piece of paper, guys. Closing costs, I prefer to own it because I own it. I'm controlling the deed, the title. I'm getting a write-off depreciation. There's a lot of advantages to that. But if a seller's hesitant to it, and then we ask that magic question is, if you don't sell it, what are you going to do next? And they say, well, I'm going to rent it, Trace, or Stephen, or Carrie, or whomever. Well, then why don't you rent it to me with the option to buy it? And my agreement's a little bit better than the one you're going to have, because my agreement says that I'm responsible for the maintenance. I'm responsible for repairs, and I'm going to be the one responsible for all utilities. So if a toilet gets plugged, nobody calls you, they're going to call me. You're going to rent it anyways, right? So that's a great option for somebody who's worried about the deed transfer or worried about the property, in that situation. So we'll dive into that another time. But I want to dive into some of the questions that we have. But I want to say quickly to kind of round this part out. If you're looking to grow your real estate business and you want to start accumulating properties, whether you keep it as a rental or this lease purchase, the best way, in my opinion, to buy is if I could buy without using banks, without using credit, and especially if I'm able to help a seller out in a situation where there's not really many more options. So it's super beneficial and we're saving people's credit. I've actually had one of my favorite sellers. She sent me a text message. This has probably been a year ago, but she's like, I can't believe how much higher my credit score is because y'all keep making my payment on time, because she was in a situation to where she didn't make her payment for a while when we bought her house, did a loan modification. Your credit is taking a big hit from that, right? So we buy it right after the loan modification comes back, because that's when she was reaching out to us. And we've been making that payment on time for years. And now her credit has thrown back up, because what's better than having an on-time mortgage being paid on your credit, where it's not unsecured debt like a credit card, that could hurt your credit having too much debt there. But a mortgage that's being paid on time is what helps you keep your credit score high. So not only are we saving them on the deal, we're keeping their credit scores, keeping them high too. So a lot of great things, guys. Do we have any questions, Jen?
Yeah, so you kind of covered this a little bit, but just touching back on that bad credit, Giselle's asking, and how to overcome that obstacle. What are the options?
So Giselle, that is a great question. And this is the thing of what we love to do, is to be able to not use your credit. So when I'm talking to a seller, I don't get my credit checked. And if you're talking to a seller who's really in a situation, they don't care. They don't ask you what your credit is. Are you able to help them out? Right? It's about them. And if you're able to help them out, that's what they're concerned about. Do they like you? Do they trust you? And can you help them in their situation? And if you could do those three things, it doesn't matter what your credit's like. And what my old coach would say too, Ron, I hope you do have bad credit, so that makes you not be able to go get a loan, right? Because he doesn't want you to get a loan. He's talked about how so many people, because Ron's been doing this for over 40 years, so how so many people really got hit badly in 2008, where it's, a decade beyond that, and they're still reeling some of the lawsuits and effects from that. So having your name on the dotted line, whether it's through your LLC and you're personally guaranteeing that loan to a bank, your name is still on that dotted line through your LLC. You're still personally liable if you're personally guaranteeing even a mortgage through your LLC or through your own name. If you're PGing, what they call that, your name is on the line. So the best way to do that is to avoid that at all costs. And the benefit is too, especially right now with buying these houses with sub 2 or wrap mortgages, when you're taking over their underlying debt or paying that underlying debt, the mortgage rates were so much better. We're getting deals at like 2.75, 3%. Somebody got a mortgage 3 years ago and their rate's 3.2%, and I'm taking over that. And the neat thing about it is they've already paid the first 3 years or so, which are mostly interest always, right? So now we're digging into, it's a little bit more principal than in the first 3 years, and we're still getting that 3.1%. So these are some of these advantages to why, can I make these figures work where I could pay quite a bit more than anybody else? Is sure, if I could get into it, no money down, long terms on a cash flowing property. Our exit strategy is what gives us the ability to scale faster, because the money we do have out, we recuperate it really quickly back. And that's what also helps us to scale. So a lot of folks talk about bringing on partners to help them out, which you always hear partners, right? How does that work out? Could work out great, could be an issue depending on who you're partnering with. And that's always tough to say, right? Partners are great when everything's going great, but how are they when they turn bad, right? When the crap starts hitting the wall, is your partner leaving you, dissing you, right? Or are they working with you to figure out how to do this? The best way to not do this and don't need a partner is by doing it yourself. The best way to not have a partner is a partner with yourself by having some knowledge on how to do it without using that, right? So that's my advice for there. You don't need partners. So how to do it without credit? Don't worry about that. You don't need it.
All right. Her other question was, How do you leverage realtors for deals?
So that is a great question. So up until about 6 months ago, it doesn't really work that well because the market was so hot. Everybody was so snooty, sellers. If you wouldn't give them what they wanted, they know I'm going to go list it on the market with a realtor. It's going to sell opening weekend. We're going to have 50 showings. I'm going to have 12 offers and they're all going to be over asking, no inspections, and you got to throw in a kitchen sink and all the other good stuff, right? So back then it was really hard because a realtor, you talk to them and they would basically like almost laugh at you. However, the tables have turned. See how fast the market could shift. Now I'm having realtors reach out to me and saying, I have a seller who just bought the house 4 months ago, and for XYZ reasons, they need to sell. I have the house on the market and it's not selling. And we just did one. I think, Jen, didn't you share the reel on Winter Haven?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this house right here, guys, is a $600,000 house that we just did. We just closed on it. Was it last week?
Yeah, we're just waiting for all the funds to clear, but everything should be closed.
So this seller has a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood in Winter Haven, Florida. If you go to Fave, F-A-V-E, homebuyers.com, you'll see the house right on there. The one in Winter Haven. Check it out. It's a pretty awesome house. It's a 3,000 square foot house. I think it's a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom, decked out, in-ground pool, lake view across the street, park next door. So it's got a really nice lot. Great view. The seller just bought it. His job was in Miami, but he could work from home. He moves to this place outside Orlando, buys the home. His son, who they've been applying to get into this special school for years, finally gets accepted after like 2 months after they close on this house, or like a month after. They're moving to Texas. He owes $563 on the house. We told him that we could buy it sub 2. He says, I don't know about that. My realtor seems to think I could sell it. The market's still pretty decent. I said, well, then good luck, try. And if it doesn't work out, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can put this together. He was going to list it for $585. However, if he listed it and sold it for $585, he'd have to write a check for almost $20-something thousand, which he did not have. He was praying and spraying, as they call it, that he gets 600,000 plus for it. And somebody would bail him out. Well, opening weekend, they didn't have one showing. The next week, all next week, not one showing. Guess who calls us up? I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, we're moving next month. Okay, I need to have this thing sold. So it comes back to us, sub 2, buy it, we're at mortgage, but buy with no money down. Beautiful turnkey house. Now, if it was closer to the beach, we might have moved into it ourselves. That is too far from the beach. I promise if I move to Florida, I want to live, not have to be on the water, but I want to be closer to the beach. And that's like what, a little over an hour and something drive, 2 hour
It was
drive.
tempting though. She's a beauty. It was probably one of the most beautiful houses we've seen.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. If it was literally any closer, I don't think it would have been a challenge at all. We've been like, I'll take it.
Yep.
But it's coming, right? And we know it's coming. And we'll find our next house in every house that we're ever going to buy the same way. And that's kind of the benefits of doing what we do. Is it's challenging because you come across a beautiful house and you're like, should I keep it? Should we move into it? Because this isn't the first time this has happened to us. Because what really truly happened was we found this beautiful house in New York State. Absolutely stunning house. And I said, hon, holy cow, look at this. Why don't we move into this one where we bought it? And she's like, why would I move there when it's still as cold as it is here? It's like 15 minutes from our house now. I'm like, you're right. It is cold here. And then we came to Florida and realized how hot it was. And me, I like it. She does too. Not as much as I do, but we both love it. So we decided to move somewhere warmer. If not, that was another one where we come across a beautiful house and we were going to keep it. So a lot of these situations, guys, you can find your very own home to live in. It doesn't have to be a rental property. You can find your next home, right? And that's what we plan on doing too. So how to leverage realtors? Reach out to them now and say, do you have anybody who has a house that they're selling that when they sell it, they're going to have to write a check? They're in the red by the time they take out the realtor commissions and the fees. Are you seeing any of these situations? Have any of these situations come across your desk that you are in, a seller's in a predicament? Maybe they can't even afford to do it, right? And you tell them, I can't help you because they By the time you take out the commissions, they're going to be way too far in the red and they can't write that size check. Mr. and Mrs. Realtor, if you come across a situation, I can buy that deal, still figure a way to put something in your pocket and save that seller and bail them out. I get stretch and pay more if they're flexible. So if you come across any of these, I want you to think of me as your bailout person. Bring those leads to me. I'm not asking for their prime listings, guys, where they want 6% commission or they're half the third commission. I'm looking for the ones where I'm their last ditch effort. So when I have to figure out what I'm going to pay this realtor to bring me the lead, they know they're not going to get the full commission, right? They might have a listing already like this, where it's just sitting there not selling. And maybe they don't even have to write a check to be in the red. Maybe there's another situation where the seller is motivated to sell. Sometimes they have pain, sometimes they don't. But sometimes that house is sitting in the market and it's not selling, and the seller is getting antsy. Sometimes they can't afford it. Sometimes they've already moved. Sometimes there's a list of reasons why they need this thing gone and it's not selling. If that realtor sees any of these situations coming across their desk, let's talk about that too, right? So how can I get leads for free? By networking with realtors who are coming across listings. Because guys, from what everybody predicts, if these interest rates keep on going up the way they do, unfortunately, this is going to hurt the retail market, but it helps what we do tremendously. So I keep sitting here with our team saying, you know, we're making a lot of deals when the market was red hot. Wait till this market is shifting, and it is. We're starting to feel the curve of that now. A lot of people in our CRM, I just looked at one today. We were talking to the seller in May of 2021. Let me tell you, I could look at the whole conversation. Boy, the conversation's changed. The attitude has changed. You could read it right in the comments in the conversation. It's all through texting. The conversation of what they thought they were going to do in May of 2021 is a whole lot different than what's happening mid-October 2022. So this is why if you have talked to somebody before in the past year, 6 months, 2 years, sellers before down the road, maybe you haven't before, but in these situations, sellers are going to really start having a little bit of a change, and it's going to help what you're doing. All right.
You have a couple more questions here. Have you ever run into, this is from Trace James, have you ever run into issues where with your wrap where the original seller has their insurance and taxes escrowed? It sounds like you are no longer escrowing the insurance with the new policy you get. Are you paying the insurance and taxes lump sum on your own then, or are you still escrowing?
Great question, Trace. So what we do is we do cancel their existing insurance policy once we have our new insurance policy in place. So what will happen is you're going to have an overage on your escrow the next year, right? Because you're still paying into it, because your insurance policy, you're going to pay that separately up front, right? You're going to pay the 6 months up front. The taxes, however, are still going to be escrowed in there. So what happens is if their homeowner insurance policy was, say, $1,000 for the year, and you cancel it halfway through the year, your payments will still stay the same. But at the end of the year, you're going to have an overage, which will make your payments drop a little bit more than next year. And that's why it's important, if you buy a house with a wrap mortgage, you're getting the monthly statements every single month. So when that monthly payment does change, you're able to change what you're paying, because it does. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. And if you're used to paying $1,000 a month and it goes to $1,150, you need to make sure you're on top of that. And if it goes down, you want to make sure you're on top of that too, right? So that's why it's important to make sure you get that monthly statement. But yes, we do have the first policy canceled, show the bank, our lender, our new policy, and keep the taxes escrowed.
Yep.
Great question.
Carrie says, what do you do when someone has a 15-year mortgage and the payment is a little high?
Yes, we actually have one of those going on right now.
Mhm.
So the benefit is this: if I'm able to buy the property right, and I'm able to put in a tenant buyer, collect a not large enough non-refundable option deposit, what we also like to do is have our down payment assistance program. So once again, somebody falls in love with the right property, they've got their 10% down, it's $20,000. I know I'm up money there. Say I'm in a situation where I'm going to be negative cash flow $100 a month, and I don't love it. Well, then I'm going to make sure I set them up for a short term. They gave me 20 grand to move in, but if I have to lose $100 a month, I'm going to make sure that one really gets like, hey guys, you need to get cashed out in 2 years. Like I'm going to be watching you like a hawk, not the folks where I'm making $500 a month and I'll say, set it and forget it. The next step though, to also make sure you could help yourself there is what we have as our down payment assistance carry. So anything that you pay above your rent gets added to your down payment. So some of our tenant buyers like to do $200 to $300 a month over their rent, and that gets added every month to their down payment. And some folks like to do $800 to $1,000 a month over every month. So Carrie, how much over per month can you give on your down payment? And then I ask that question just like that. And Carrie's going to say, I could do, what do you think? I could do $200 more a month. Went from losing 100 to making 100. And that extra $200 is cash flow. That extra $200 will be taxable just like anything else. And it will go towards the purchase. So I make sure we keep track of that. So we write it up that they're going to pay X amount per rent. And then $200 of this is going to their non-refundable option deposit. So in 2 years, that's another, $4,800. But this could be that small swing of getting another $200, $300 to $800, $900 more of just cash flow, right? So we have some of our, honestly, they pay, I think it's like $900 over every month, $800 over. And we are cash flowing like a monster out of some of these places where there's nobody in these places getting anywhere close to where we are.
You have a few, almost 1,000.
Yeah, 1,000 over. So if we're normally $500 cash flow on that property, we're $1,500 on those.
And
That
they're
makes a
the
big difference.
pretty big, nice properties. Like they're the ones that they have the extra money to put towards that.
So that could help. Doesn't always solve the problem, but short term, right? Make sure they get cashed out quickly, offer that program, but we word it the right way to make sure, some of our tenant buyers like to pay $200, $300, some are $800 to $1,000 over. What's the most you could pay over your rent every month? It's going to get added to your down payment, and then you zip it. Ask the question, get your answer, write it up.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Trace James said, are most of the lease options 2 years? If they can't buy at that point, are you renegotiating the monthly payment and purchase price higher and going for another 2 years?
What I will do is to answer your questions, if they don't get it done in 2 years, I'm going to revisit the price, adjust it accordingly. I'm going to adjust the market or the rent, adjust that accordingly. I'm going to renew it for another year. And then we're going to revisit it next year too. And most of the time next year, if the market hasn't gone crazy, I'm going to say, okay, good. You guys are good for another year. Renew it to same terms for another year. We just had a big increase. So from 2 years ago, pre-COVID to now, there's been a huge increase. A lot of our properties have gone up $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, right? So I want to, if you do not cash it out in time, fine. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire. Like I said earlier, I'm going to make sure you still get a good deal, but like we're going to adjust it accordingly. So.
Awesome. What can we offer to sellers? This is Stephen. What can we offer to sellers sitting on $1 million properties that are paid off, but are concerned about the tax liability, or those that have hundreds, thousands in equity, but can't get the price they want?
Great questions. So with your first question, $1 million properties, we deal with those a lot, especially being here in Florida. I mean, to get $1 million property here is not very hard to do. So on these free and clear properties, as long as it's their primary residence and their capital gains amount, depending on if they were single or joint ownership of the property, they may or may not have to pay capital gains tax. The one thing I do say with folks who do have to pay capital gains tax, if they did profit over the 500,000 and they're a joint couple, if their profit anything over 500,000, they will get taxed on. The one benefit of selling it with seller financing is we could help with your deferring your full tax amount by limiting to how much you're getting paid per year. So really that's going to help their tax situation the most. We obviously say we're not accountants, to check with your accountant, but I do know that when we do this, a lot of accountants love this way because it really does help the seller in the situation not get hit with one big lump versus being able to take it in monthly installments, where now if they're able to take it in monthly installments, they're only getting taxed on that amount. And that's incentive for somebody on a free and clear $1 million home to push out our term very long, right? Maybe they don't want to get cashed out in 5-10 years. Maybe they're more open to 30 or 40 years because they know with those payments, they're going to pass that down to their kids. We had a situation like that. The woman's 7 years old. She says, I'm setting this up for my kids. So I said, well, if you're going to want to net the most on this property, it's not going to be listing with a realtor, paying a 6% commission, getting your money, getting taxed on that, because there was going to be some capital gains on there. I was like, if you're going to want to really make the most amount of money for your kids, we sell it. We buy it even at 2% interest is the way we structured that deal, between the finance charges and what we could pay for the property, and also limiting to how much you're paying in taxes. This is the way you're going to net the most for your family. And if your goal is to make this money for your family, whether you're here or not, those monthly payments are going to be coming in every month for the next 30 years. So in some situations, they will love this idea. In some situations, they might need to get cashed out sooner, which you could work that out, but still making monthly payments can help them with their taxes. If they have a lot of equity and they need money, a lot of times we'll have them take a home equity loan against the property. And what we'll be paying is that payment. So we have a lot of situations where they have $1 million home and they need $100,000 down to go buy this. We'll take out your home equity loan, not equity line of credit, equity loan for the $100,000, and whatever that payment is, we'll pay that payment. We'll pay the taxes and insurance, and you could get your equity. So I could get into that deal with no money down. And if I was truly smart, I would have them take out $115,000, and that would cover my insurance policy and the covering closing costs. And I really get in the deal with zero money down, right? And just charge it to the price. I'm making the payment anyways. So $1 million or not, but I was scared of them at first, I'll be honest with you.
Mhm.
And then our coach said, it's just one extra zero. Don't be scared of them.
Yep.
I said, well.
This is not real estate related, but how did we choose this Sarasota area? I say the sunsets and just feels like you're on vacation, even though we're working, but when you're not working, it's amazing.
But it's a dilemma, because then also too, when we had the hurricane, we went to the east coast of Florida, to the West Palm Beach area, and it was absolutely amazing there too. Completely different vibe. Feel, different vibe. So I guess I don't know where our forever home is, but so far we seem to really like this area, but we haven't been everywhere else yet. I think this is the neat thing about being self-employed. Mm-hmm. And we, for the first time of our lives, are not having to be tied down to being close to our jobs. We Zoom with friends and family all the time. We actually FaceTime and Zoom with family more than we were even when we were back up north.
Yeah.
So that hasn't really changed much. And now actually people want to come visit us. They just don't want to, look, they're dying to come down here in February.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of the first spot we've tried out, and then we just, we're busy working quite a bit, but we do love it here. But yeah, Tampa's cool. If you haven't been down here, come check it out. Do we have a separate bank account for each property?
No. We have LLCs, and those LLCs, you'll have our properties are deeded into land trusts, and those beneficiaries of those land trusts are LLCs. And then each LLCs will have their properties or their own bank accounts. So you could have one in, each one, or you could have 3 or 4 land trusts be filtering into one LLC, right? So you don't have all your eggs in one basket, maybe you have a couple in there. And generally, the neat thing about this too is if I buy your property for $200,000 and it's worth 200 grand or 220, whatever, you don't really have houses that are completely paid off in that LLC. So even inside of that LLC, there's not millions of dollars of equity. So you could put 3 or 4 in there and be safe. If I had a free and clear property or 2 or 3 free and clear properties, I almost want to separate them a little bit more so they're not intertwined. But there's also things called piercing the corporate shield and yada, yada, yada. You always got to worry about.
That's a totally other hour-long Zoom call.
If not more, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this one, I know some people who sell to buyers on a note, which they hypothecate with local banks instead of rent to own with tenant buyers. Have you thought of trying this? So basically selling notes, I think.
Oh yeah, you could definitely sell your notes. There's no buyers out there who will want these. We get hit up sometimes too. I don't know if you realize it or not. People like, I buy notes. If you have any of your deals that you want to sell at the notes on, let me know. And I'm like, and I know, you know what, to be honest with you, I haven't ever veered down that road. Right. I know there's And here's what I try to do, or try my very best not to do, is not to get too shiny object syndrome, because there's so much to learn. And the more networks we're in, like we are part of so many masterminds, and you listen to this guy, you listen to this lady, you listen to this couple, and you listen to this person, right? And they're doing so many amazing things, making tons of money, making it all look easy. And you're like, well, where do I start? And then you almost get so overwhelmed, you don't do anything. Right. So there are so many ways to make money. That's just one of them I haven't honestly ventured into that I would love to, but I really try to stay laser focused and become amazing at this. And then it's like being a new quarterback, right? You get a coach, your quarterback, rookie, they don't give you the full playbook in the beginning. They give you the basics, and then as you progress, they open up the playbook a little bit more, but they're not going to overwhelm you with the whole thing, because then it causes issues. But there's so many amazing people doing great stuff.
Okay, he doesn't mean selling notes, borrowing against the notes. You can borrow 75K against a 100K note, hypothecate the note, which saves you the capital gains taxes on a sale.
Interesting. Who's asking this question? Because they know some stuff.
ESA.
Well, I like you already. Got to connect to ESA and find out more about this.
Yeah, when I need to set up a call.
Yes, thank you.
All righty. And then I think the last one was Chase is asking about the 600K house. Did we get a $60,000 non-refundable option on that Winter Haven house?
No, we wholesale that one to somebody who's turning that into an Airbnb. We found somebody who wants to do that property, and they're turning that into an Airbnb, because once you run the area over there, that could turn into another thing. We could run across these properties that I could turn into an Airbnb, right? But then I'm running, that's a whole other business. In between coaching the way that we coach, because we coach one-on-one with our students, in between running our business, managing our team, there's a lot of stuff that we're looking at every single day, right? So Airbnb sounds wonderful, and I would love to do that, but that's a whole other business. And what we've learned from our coaches are, go ahead, I'm not allowed to start another business until I have what?
An integrator.
An integrator.
And it's not me.
It's not my wife. So an integrator is somebody who I'm going to give them the idea, but they're going to be the boots on the ground. They're going to be the ones swinging all the stuff, doing it all, and we're going to be partners on that. But until we have an integrator, I'm not allowed to do stuff like that. So those are some of the things that really I try to stay focused on. We try to really stay in our lanes. We found a really great niche of how to talk to a lot of sellers, how to help them in their situations, and how to either keep those for ourselves. But to be honest with you, we find so many deals, we cannot close on them all our own. So a lot of these, we share them with our other investors, other investor friends, you guys, right? So sometimes if somebody wants some of these deals, we assign them. We have a really great turnkey house. We just assigned we gave this one away, guys. This is a turnkey house in South Carolina. We got it at $5,000 down. We have a 0% mortgage for 10 years at only $500 a month. Once you add in the taxes and insurance, it's about $750 a month for PITI. Remember, $500 a month is principal only. There's no interest. And you can rent that for $1,100 all day long. The house is turnkey. It's just been renovated. Right. So we collect a $12,000 assignment for that. We're not hitting home runs. Right. That's not a huge assignment. But for somebody who has $12,000, $5,000 to the seller, so it's $17,000, probably a couple grand in closing costs, you're probably $20,000 out of pocket. You bought this house the right way. You bought it turnkey, and you have a cash flowing ability of at least $300-400 a month, depending on if you put in a tenant buyer like we would, or if you were to, you could do a million different things. You could sell it with seller financing and put in an interest rate. Either way, you've got a lot of options with that property. And you have a 10-year 0% mortgage, right? So you're not paying any interest on it, and you're not overpaying for the property in order to get that. So once again, when we come across these deals, we could only open up so many LLCs at a time and do all the other things in all these other states, because we find deals all over the place. This is why we share them with you guys. So we educate and we share this is what we're doing, but we also are doing it somewhat selfishly. So we teach you all how to do this. So if you want to buy any of our deals, you know where to go find them. Right. But either way, the goal is to help you get your deals and grow your empire, just like what we do with our own team. So when you work for Jen and Joe, part of what we do is we're sitting down twice a day in meetings. So you're learning from us every single day. But we also encourage our team to be real estate investors. So a lot of our team has now bought deals. Some of them are our deals, some of them they found on their own because of how we farm for these things and what we've worked on and discover. And we're turning them into real estate investors. And that's the best thing about it. So this is why we're here for you guys. Same thing, share the information of how you can grow your own business. And if you do need that kickstart, we get our deals for you guys too. So that's what we're here to do. I think I'm all out of questions. I did go over, apologize guys. So sorry.
Shocking.
I'd love to talk about this stuff, right? So next Tuesday, we're gonna be back on. So we did have a Dodger hurricane, but hurricane's gone. Luckily, fingers crossed, don't come back. And we'll be back on next Tuesday, same time, same place. We'll drop a new link, going over new topics. If there's stuff you guys want to hear more about, please send us a message on Creative Finance Playbook. Same thing too, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, Creative Finance Playbook on YouTube. And we will see you guys next Tuesday. So
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Great seeing you.
thanks, guys.
Bye.